Here we go. Jake and Josh are here to analyze the game they love for the team they love. This is another Dolphins podcast. Here's your host, Jake Mendel and Josh Houtz.
Thanks for tuning into another edition of another Dolphins podcast. This is a show we have only been able to do twice in the last 2 years. That is a playoff game preview. The Miami Dolphins are headed to Kansas City to play the Chiefs. Joining me for this episode of another Dolphins podcast, at Brian Cat NFL. Cat, it's good to see you again, my buddy.
Good to see you too, Jake. It is the playoffs for the second year in a row. And hey, I think last year when Skylar Thompson was in a quarterback going down to Buffalo, we expected a spanking. And then there we are in the fourth quarter with the lead in Buffalo. So hopefully the Dolphins can put everything behind them and come out with a win here in Kansas City in the frigid temperatures.
That Buffalo game was very incredibly surprising, especially when you're down to your third string quarterback. What would you say, to kind of put you on the spot here off the top of your head, what was the biggest thing you might have learned from that Buffalo playoff game that you maybe didn't know about this Miami Dolphins team?
Skylar Thompson sucks, and we need a new developmental quarterback. I mean, look, I can't blame Skylar Thompson. He is what he is. He's a seventh-round pick and doesn't have that strong of an arm. He's got some mobility, but what was, I think it was like 16 for 45 or something like that. And the Dolphins had the lead in the fourth quarter, and then he threw that awful interception. And, Bills just steamrolled from there. Kind of like this past week.
I couldn't believe they didn't use his legs more. But, hey, I like we're going in different directions here. I was going to be a little more positive and bring up Christian Wilkins and Zach Sealer. No matter what the temperature is, those guys aren't wearing sleeves. Zach Sealer came out on Thursday saying he's not mixing up his routine, his traditions. He's going to be out there in Kansas City. It's going to feel like negative 25. He's not going to be wearing sleeves. And that's where I think I wanted to start this game preview of how this Miami Dolphins defense can, for maybe the second time this year, contain Patrick Mahomes and this Kansas City offense. Remember back when these two teams met in Germany, the Chiefs won 21-14, but probably the biggest game play of the game was a Tyreek Hill fumble that was returned 60 yards for a touchdown that really, really just kind of warped every expectation we had. But looking ahead to this playoff game, looking ahead of how Miami can be successful with, the Roadhogs at edge rusher, it starts with Zach Sealer, it starts with Christian Wilkins. And based on last year, I'm really excited what these guys can do in a primetime statement game.
Yeah, and I've got to start by saying, it's only fair. Last week on this show, I said Christian Wilkins was a fraud against these big teams, and I had evidence and data to back that up. Where against the Bills, he had 1 sack in 9 games. Well, Christian Wilkins had what should have been the play of the year against the Buffalo Bills, sacking Josh Allen in the fourth quarter and then ripping the ball away for a Dolphins possession that in the fourth quarter, where if the Dolphins go up 2 scores on that drive, you probably win the AFC East. So had a fantastic game, and he and Sealer combined are a great tandem. It's always been about money for me with Wilkins. But yeah, I mean, how it factors in here is that the Dolphins' advantage in this game, one advantage that they do have, and they don't have many, but they do have this one, is they are better than the Chiefs at both running and stopping the run. And you take a game like this, where it's supposed to be, between 5 and 10 degrees out. And that's a big advantage to have in this one. The Chiefs have advantage in other areas. Mahomes is probably the better quarterback. They're playing in Kansas City. The Chiefs are to some extent used to playing in that type of weather. But if you can run and stop the run like the Dolphins can, and they've been able to do for most of the season, that's definitely something in the positive column.
Isaiah Pacheco is such a physical runner. I don't know if you saw this clip. There was it was one of the Giants playoff runs. They were playing in Green Bay, and the temperature must have been like a negative 15 or so. And they were talking about the first play of the game. It was Brandon Jacobs, just a 5-yard run to the outside. And he absolutely ran over Charles Woodson. And it just kind of set the tone for that entire game. And like, it kind of pushed the Packers defense back on itself. It kind of tripped up because the entire stadium heard just the physicality of this play and how playing in this temperature is different. How do you feel about how Miami's defensive front matches up against someone like Isaiah Pacheco? Obviously, I don't think Jaylen Ramsey's going to be down there at the line trying to tackle him, but you have some vets coming in like Bruce Irvin, Justin Houston, where I don't think they're going to walk onto the field and say, oh no, running back's hitting me hard. I don't know what to do.
Yeah, I mean, as far as the actual one-on-one matchups are concerned, the Chiefs have one of the best interior lines in the game, and they're all healthy still. Joe Tooney at left guard, Creed Humphrey at center, and Trey Smith at right guard, and that's where Wilkins are going to line up against. They're the tackle spots where left tackle should play, and Jawan Taylor has been a huge disappointment for them. But you know, the Dolphins are without their top 4 edge rushers, so they are, like you said, pulling people off the street. So they signed Justin Houston, they signed Bruce Irvin, who are 34 and 36 years. Uh, so that's it's going to be on Vic Fangio in this, not only to get pressure on the quarterback, but to really revamp pretty much his entire defense in 1 week, because you have not only nothing of what you had on the outside at outside linebacker DN, but you're pulling people off the street and inserting them into the lineup here.
Considering that, and you have injuries everywhere. Javon Holland's questionable. We saw him take himself out of the game last week due to his knees injuries. He just couldn't really keep up on the field. Deshaun Elliott's another one who's questionable. He suffered a calf injury in warmups last week. I guess the plan for him wasn't to practice this week and then just trying to be ready for the game so he doesn't overdo it. Xavier Howard, we know he's already out. So looking at this Miami Dolphins depth chart and what they're working with, what do you think is that first advantage or opportunity they should try to take advantage of, just looking at the rosters?
Well, if you look at the Chiefs depth chart and where they've struggled this year, I mean, it's been a horrid year for their receivers. And Travis Kelce almost 1,000 yards, but it looked like him, not the 1,400 yard receiver of years past, but still one of the best tight ends in the game. And I do think he's out for revenge and to prove some people wrong. And he's got a little bit of more of a chip on his shoulder as the playoffs approach, I think. But if you're going to play a playoff game where you're missing Xavier Howard and you've got 2 safeties at questionable, this is probably the game to do it, because, Rashee Rice, almost 1,000 yards as a rookie on the year. But after that, it's been a bad year for them at wide receiver. Marcus Valdes-Scantling, just Watson have come up with plays occasionally, but week in and week out, it's been a problem for the Chiefs.
The last time these two teams met, Justin Watson actually led the Chiefs with 5 receptions. 5 targets. Kelce was targeted 4 times. Noah Gray was targeted 3. Same was true for Sky Moore, MVS, and Mecole Hardman. Rashee Rice, who has really become their big play threat, he was only targeted twice in that game. Seeing that the Chiefs, at least last time, I mean, it was week 9, they were still looking for answers in the season, maybe hoping one of these wide receivers could catch fire. Do you think that this is going to be another scenario where the Chiefs are kind of looking for answers, or do you kind of see them growing that trust with Rashee Rice, who's really taken off in recent weeks? And obviously Travis Kelce, where they're going to maybe try to funnel it to those guys because they can trust them.
Well, if you look at last game against the Chiefs, it was the final game Jaylen Ramsey didn't play in before the bye week and before the Raiders. He came back in the Raiders game. Xavier Howard, I believe, was playing, but if he was playing hurt. Yep. And so Ramsey's better than Howard. So at the cornerback spot, you've got a little bit more of an advantage in this game than you had in the last one. And you look at the Chiefs receivers, and they're the same. They're the same that they were last time. So, but you look at, again, going back to the last matchup, the Chiefs put up 14 points of offense all in the first quarter. The Dolphins defense shut them out in the second half, which makes that game an even bigger shame that they didn't win. But really, this to me looks like a Chiefs offense that is going to try to figure this out in the offseason. I mean, because they put too much on Patrick Mahomes' ability to improvise and just run around and create pockets and create time. And it just hasn't worked with those receivers. So it's a game the Dolphins defensively, even with all of their injuries, still could hang tough. It's not the Chiefs of years past.
Yeah, and kind of thinking about last week too, you had Josh Allen, which their entire game plan, it wasn't the scheme that let Josh Allen kind of work his way back into the game. It was just playing backyard football. And I'm interested to see, coming off of having to deal and chase around Josh Allen and chase around Lamar Jackson, how that can kind of help you prepare for someone like Patrick Mahomes. I'd argue the player who's the best behind the line of scrimmage out of those 3 is Mahomes. I don't think we'll see him scramble as much. I could even be wrong about that. He does have quick feet and he can move down the field. I just hope they kind of stick to what they did last week. I think the only reason the Buffalo Bills won that game, you could even go back to the game against the Kansas City Chiefs. It's limiting those big plays that kind of just give you 6 points so quickly. The 59-yard fumble recovery for Brian Cook, the punt return last week. I mean, the Chiefs scored 2 touchdowns in the first half on offense, and both of those 11-yard pass and 17-yard pass. Yes, those are closer and you're in the red zone, but I mean, we see how strong this Vic Fangio defense is at that you have to crawl down the field and get first down after first down. Especially they make those last 10 yards, even though, Jerome Baker's not out there to make that monster tackle at the 1-yard line. They make those last 10 yards so hard, and they're the most important 10 yards in all of football. So how does the Miami Dolphins defense really put a lid on this Chiefs offense from kind of finding that change that turns into a big play that you're not really expecting?
Well, I remember this game on those 2 touchdown drives. It was so difficult for the Chiefs to drive the length of the field. Now, things are different now because without Bradley Chubb, without Jaylen Phillips, I mean, you're talking about your edge setters on the outside who played very well in that game. So now you've got Emmanuel Ogbah and you got Melvin Ingram starting. I'd say Melvin Ingram played outstanding in the last game. Maybe he does have a couple left here. Or maybe he does have another good game or two left. But we'll see. But also too, Mahomes is somebody. I'd never say that it's good that you don't pressure the quarterback or get heat on the quarterback. But Mahomes is also one of those guys too, where when you get pressure on him, he kind of starts to get going. He moves around the pocket more. Whereas if you're not getting as much pressure, he stays a little bit more stationary in the pocket. So we'll see how the dynamics of that change. But as far as the Dolphins' top 3 edge rushers now, Melvin Ingram, Emmanuel Ogbah, and Justin Houston, all ex-Kansas City Chiefs. So can it be a revenge game of some sort for all 3 of these guys?
That'd be something, wouldn't it? That would definitely be something. Something Vic Fangio came out and said this week, and I'm curious to your thoughts, was they don't want to use Christian Wilkins lining up as a defensive end this week. Just to not maybe. Obviously, if you're going to have a couple brand new edge rushers out there, you're not going to have a better duo to put them with than Zach Sealer and Christian Wilkins. But do you feel confident in this team's ability to stop the run? Because that's kind of what I was thinking. If the Miami Dolphins are going to go to Kansas City in this freezing temperature, force, some of these wide receivers to have some games they haven't been having this year, I kind of thought it'd be an interesting idea to put Wilkins maybe at defensive edge and just make that defensive line a just absolute wall that you're not going to get by one way or another.
Well, you just identified why I don't usually pay attention to press conferences as much as other people, because if Vic Fangio said that, then I'm more inclined to believe that they're going to do that they're going to play Wilkins more at edge than I otherwise would have. So, yeah, I mean they're going to put him. He's one of their best. Wilkins is one of the Dolphins' best defensive players. They're going to put him in the best spot. And for the year, the Dolphins, if you take out really the Ravens game, it's been almost 3 months since the Dolphins have been gashed against the run. I mean, just even last week. I mean, look, James Cook, 13 carries for 36 yards last week. And earlier in the season, Cook had 12 for 29. So you're talking about one of the top running backs in the NFL. There have been some instances of running backs doing well. I mean, Pacheco in the last game, 16 carries, 66 yards, a little over 4 yards a carry. That's good. I mean, but I depend on the Dolphins to be able to stop the run comfortably with Sealer, Raekwon Davis, and Christian Wilkins. So that's got to be part of it, because if they don't stop the run, they don't have a whole heck of a lot else on this defense or on this team.
I completely agree. And looking at that back end there, how would you use Jalen Ramsey, do you feel? Is it putting him on one side of the field? Do you really use him as that queen on the chessboard and just moving him all over the place? And if so, who is that going to be on?
I wouldn't move him all over the place unless you're going to do that to Travis Kelce. And, last game, Kelce, 3 catches, 18 yards. So against the Dolphins. So whatever you did last game to Travis Kelce, you can bet the Chiefs are going to try to outthink the Dolphins on that, and they've got to be ready for that. But whatever they did on Kelce last game certainly worked. And it'll be interesting to see too, where, what's even more frustrating about the Bills' loss is that I can't blame the people that we usually blame. Like Eli Apple had the game of his life. He gave up some big plays too, but had two just out of his mind forced turnovers. At the end of the first half, he helps in that stop at the 1 yard line, and he gets the interception that takes 3 points off the board. If he can repeat that performance again, that would be huge for the Dolphins, especially with all the defensive backs they've got.
That's what this game's going to come down to. Who are going to be those guys that we haven't really shared their story about? Merrick and Josh yesterday brought up Brandon Jones as like a star player to watch just because of how this Chiefs team's going to try to attack. I think that Brandon Jones is a wrecking ball who can. Travis Kelce, famous last words, I don't think he's going to juke by you. I think he's more likely to run people over. And Brandon Jones kind of seems like a nice counter to that. But is there anyone else you also had in mind too, who we haven't really talked a lot about, who might be the guy?
I like what was said about Jones because, already one of the best blitzing safeties in the league that hasn't been able to showcase that a lot this year. And you might be able to do that a little bit more in this game where, don't have a lot of just pure deep speed. They don't have a lot of talent in general at the wide receiver position. So having him back there in a starting role, if Elliott or Holland don't play, not only would be a good fit in this game, but would also allow the Dolphins to maybe use him a little bit more creatively too. But aside from him, the Dolphins are playing with a lot of bare bones here in this game, and I would like to see a little bit more blitzing from David Long too. We haven't been able to see that as much, but he is an inside linebacker that telegraphs that he's going to blitz a lot and then doesn't come with it. At least we saw that a little bit more in the middle of the season. I'd like for them to come with it a little bit more in this one. Let's really get after Mahomes.
What was your reaction to that final drive last week, the Chase Claypool out route resulting in an interception? We've had a few days to stew on it, so I don't know if I would have asked for your reaction right after the fact. We might have had to be a one long beep, but as you've had a couple of days to digest it, how do you feel about how the offense kind of sputtered out there?
Well, I'm glad we don't do this on Sunday night or Monday because I certainly wasn't ready for it. But to answer your question, Sam Munson with Pro Football Focus on his podcast put it well. Just paraphrasing what he said is that looking at that play, yeah, I think you can make the argument that Chase Claypool should have run a better route and undercut the second guy and gotten to that spot quicker than Taylor Rapp did. You can make that point. The other side of this, how do you get yourself in a position where with 1:20 left, you're throwing to Chase Claypool in double coverage? So it was a failure all around of the coaching staff on Tua, on Chase Claypool. And it's going to lead to another conversation in the offseason too that is going to be fascinating to me is when you combine the snaps of Chase Claypool, Robbie Chosen, Braxton Berrios, River Craycraft, basically every receiver 3 through the rest of the depth chart, you come away with about 1,400 snaps, okay? So given that, after Hill and Waddle, and if we're having such problems with these third, fourth, and fifth receivers being unable to separate, I absolutely am in favor of drafting a wide receiver in the first round to put this offense over the top, even if that might seem like that's not the Dolphins' biggest need. Of course it isn't at wide receiver. But it's not going to – the top 3 quarterbacks in the AFC in terms of their seeding, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes. It's the same thing every year in the AFC. Tua is not that quarterback, okay? And he's the next level below. He's not a one-man wrecking crew. So if you can't get your quarterback to the level of those top 3 guys, you need to surround him with even another weapon so that it becomes insurmountable for the opposing defense.
Do you think it's based on that, or I have the same concern, but I mean, if Mike McDaniel's supposed to be the offensive mastermind, I think he's supposed to take some of that weight away. Could it be possible that this offense is so based around the skill sets of Hill and Waddle that it's just so hard for another receiver to come in, where if you there might be an opportunity somewhere to adjust the scheme a little bit and open the playbook up for a couple other guys just to give them some easy targets where, you have Durham Smythe back-to-back games, 50 yards, something little like that. It just seems like Braxton Berrios getting 2 targets per game is a little silly. Seeing River Craycraft, someone who's been in the system for so long, the Dolphins absolutely struggling with depth at receiver with Jaylen Waddle out, Tyreek Hill off the field. Craycraft was targeted on, I think, the first drive and then wasn't again for the rest of the game. So I just wonder if it is the wide receivers or if Mike McDaniel can kind of do something on his end to add a little relief. I'm not trying to blame or anything, but I'm just trying to find something in the margins to swing in their favor.
Well, I agree with you in theory that that should be happening, and these receivers should be schemed open a little bit better, but it's just not happening. And outside of course, Hill and Waddle, there were major separation issues with these receivers in this game,
Oh, yeah.
and it comes down to the same thing. I mean, we saw it in the first 2 years with Tua in the NFL. We saw it in this past game. If you cannot separate well as a wide receiver, you can't play with Tua Tagovailoa. That's what it has to come down to, because he is not somebody who is going to throw jump balls. He is going to identify the guy that is open and is separating, and he's going to put it in the right spot. But when you look at the last few games, really the miscommunications, it's often with Cedric Wilson and it's with Chase Claypool in this game. Very simply because if they don't separate at an elite level, Tua is still going to try to throw to a spot. And either the receiver is not going to get there or he is throwing to a guy that is not going to come open either.
The Dolphins offense might not have to worry about that as much this week as of Thursday. It sounds like both Raheem Mostert, the league leader in rushing touchdowns, and Jaylen Waddle are trending in the right direction to play. So tell me a little bit about how much of an impact that adds, because you can go back to last week and say, hey, Devon Achane had such a big game, but I do think there's a way to kind of separate the targets a little bit more. We're having Raheem Mostert and Devon Achane, and you can have them both be very strong pieces of this offense. And one final note here, I apologize. The Dolphins averaged 5.6 yards per carry last time they played the Chiefs, and that was without Achane in the lineup.
That's exactly right. And Achane, 2 carries for 1 yard in the second half last week. I mean, I don't get it. And to what you were saying there, Raheem Mostert and Waddle are expected back. That would if you could even get Waddle back, but Mostert back as well. I would like to see in a game that's 5 degrees where look, you're probably not going to want to against this defense throwing the ball 35 to 40 times. If you are, it's probably because you're losing. So therefore, I want to see some creativity with Mostert and with Devon Achane in the backfield here, because if the Dolphins demonstrated the ability to run the football very well, they've just got to stick with it in a game like this, where look, I don't expect the Chiefs to blow the Dolphins defense. I don't expect them to blow their doors off in a game like this. So keep the game close, and you've got to stay patient with the run too.
With that, I think there's a lot of creativity with a few end arounds and different things the Dolphins can do in that department. Idea that just popped in my head. Everyone's going to probably turn off the podcast when I say this, but I mean, if you have Raheem Mostert, Devon Achane, Jaylen Waddle, and Tyreek Hill all out in the field together, you're telling me when it's negative 15 degrees, anyone's going to be prepared to tackle Chase Claypool on an end around? We saw him do that a couple times this year. That kind of just popped into my head where I think the Dolphins could really have some fun. I like the idea of leaning in behind Robert Hunt, Austin Jackson on that right side of the offensive line. And again, I don't see this as a way of, trying to discredit Tua or anything like that. But I mean, I would love to see them run the ball 60 times and just kind of stick with it and say, hey, Mike McDaniel, you're a run game coordinator. It's negative 15 degrees outside. Let's just run the football time and time again.
I agree with you. And then, set up some easy Tua passes from that point. And yeah, exactly. And I'm a little surprised that the Dolphins haven't tried a couple of more like end arounds or screens that to really take advantage of the speed that you're sending downfield. I've been saying this really for 2 years, but yeah, I mean, they've got to get in a game where it's 5 degrees out. You're not going to be throwing the ball all over the yard, and they've got to me, the team that is going to be not only more efficient, but more patient is going to win this one.
So does that include you want more screens to Tyreek Hill? Is that what you're trying to say here?
No way. No way. Anyone but him. Running back screens. I mean, where has that gone? But then again, anytime the Dolphins try something like that, they've got 3 offensive linemen illegally downfield. So, just like in the last game. So, it's still bitter about that one.
I kind of feel, and I could be proven wrong. It's Raheem Mostert. I feel like he should be a little better as a receiving running back than he is. It just kind of seems like there are sometimes with him we see a couple just awkward drops, maybe a body catch, but that's one scenario I think I'd like to where I mean if you do have Mostert out there though in the backfield, I think you can target Achan more as a receiver as well.
Yeah, and what feeds into that too is that the Chiefs are a team that blitzes more than just about every other team in the league. The last time I checked, they're 33% of the time they blitzed. And they do that because they can really trust their cornerbacks. It's one of the best tandems in the league out of nowhere, really. Trent McDuffie and L'Jarius Sneed at the cornerback spot, as well as Jaylen Watson there in the slot. So there is an opportunity from there. If they're going to blitz, especially in a game where it's this frigid outside, being able to dump the ball off to Devon Achan on a screen pass, a player that the Chiefs did not see last time.
Mhm.
That could be a secret weapon here.
I think the offensive line as a whole might even be in a better spot than it was last time too. Tua was sacked 3 times in that game against Kansas City, but I think Liam Eichenberg actually think he had to come in and play that game. I should have looked that up. I apologize. But I'm starting to feel a little confident about what this offensive line is turning into. Obviously, I know Tua's quick release has so much to do with it, but this also is a unit that finished ninth in Pro Football Focus grade, and what they started like 14 different starting lineups. I mean, that group deserves a lot of credit, even though it's been a lot of glue, duct tape, string, all that stuff, gum.
For a organization that fired 11 offensive line coaches in 10 years, I was very, very certain that Butch Barry not doing a great job with the Broncos offensive line in 2022. I thought he was going to be horrid this year. I thought it was going to be a mess. No, he's been phenomenal. I mean, to me, the coach of the year on the Dolphins staff. And, to being pull together the Lester Cottons and the Liam Eichenbergs, uh, also in the going back to the Bills in the last game here too. I can't blame the offensive line for any of that. They played really well in that game,
Mhm.
and that's kind of the most frustrating thing about it. It would be easy to blame the edge rushers and the interior offensive line for the Bills' loss. You can't. I mean, it was pretty much everything else that cost them that game. But yeah, I mean, they've got a big task as well this week because you've got Chris Jones at D tackle, one of the best in the league, arguably the best interior lineman in the AFC over the past 5 or 6 years. George Karlaftis on the edge had a good game against the Dolphins last time too. So, yeah, they've got to be up to the task. But if they play like they did against the Bills, then this offense is certainly off to a good start.
You mentioned Achan only getting 2 carries in the second half last week. It's interesting because that's 100% true, but I also do think that the Miami Dolphins had opportunities passing the football. I'm curious to get your thoughts. I'm starting to feel that, I mean, it's so important to keep in mind. This is Mike McDaniel's second year ever calling plays. It kind of seems like he's fallen into, I don't even want to call it a trap, but he's very book smart. So if he sees a formation or he sees a skill group, he's going to attack that. Where sometimes he still needs to learn that street smart, where you just kind of want to trust Robert Hunt to win a one-on-one in isolation, excuse me, or something like that. That's kind of where I'm starting to settle in, and hopefully this game and moving forward, we start to see that diversity. But I just think that I've heard both sides say, passing attack, there's opportunities. They should run the football more, and I think both are true.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And when you look at the passing uh, game last week, I mean, look, Jaylen Waddle was missed badly, and because with him out, the Bills are one of the teams that finally in that situation said that we're going to give Tyreek Hill the attention he deserves. And
Mhm.
it was a tough game when he had 7 catches for 82 yards and he had 2 massive drops in the fourth quarter. One of which would have tied the game. The other one would have brought the Dolphins back from 2nd and 15. I mean, just huge. And in addition to that, when the strong safety walked down, the Dolphins did not have the receivers to take advantage of it. They basically said, "We're going to get these cornerbacks in your face, and you're not going to beat us with Tyreek Hill. You're going to beat us with Cedric Wilson and Chase Claypool in one-on-one coverage," and they couldn't do it. So that's that's where the problem is. But Jaylen Waddle coming back this week, just him being on the field, I think changes the entire dynamic because the receivers have to play better. Tua has to play better. And in addition to what we've said tier two, as far as play calling, you're right on what you said with Mike McDaniel and with Frank Smith. Tua also has the ability to change plays.
Mhm.
That's known. This is not Ryan Tannehill and Bill Lazor 10 years ago, where Tannehill either couldn't audible or could only do 2 plays. Tua
Mhm.
can do whatever the hell he wants, and he didn't audible into the right place last week, and that is also was also very disappointing to see.
Kat, before I get your game prediction here, it's been kind of an interesting day here in the NFL. Actually, a couple interesting few days here. Bill Belichick and the Patriots parted ways. Nick Saban saying he is stepping down as coach of the Alabama Crimson Tide. Pete Carroll saying he's going to step into more of I think a front office role with the Seattle Seahawks. So, man, I just kind of wanted to get your thoughts on the NFL really doing like a hard reset, like a hard update, something where the NFL, man, the league we spent the last 15 years growing up with, not a bad thing, but it's changing.
It sure is. I mean, when was the last time that Bill Belichick wasn't the coach of the Patriots? It was in the 90s. It was 1999. I mean,
I was 5.
see how old? Yeah, okay, yeah, you're about 10 years younger than me. So yeah, that was when I was in high school, and Pete Carroll was the coach of the Patriots before that, and then but that's crazy. And he's been here for a long time. And I've said this to every Patriots fan who's asked me. Bill Belichick's the greatest coach of all time. He's also a dinosaur. He needs to go, and he was starting to, I believe, hurt the team. Not necessarily with what he did on game day, but also really the personnel decisions that were made over the last couple of years. I mean, you had $200 million or whatever they had a few off seasons ago, and you spend it on Janu Smith and Hunter Henry and Kendrick Bourne and guys that when I heard they signed them, I'm like, what did they pay them? I Craziness. But either way, I guess for the long haul, it's good not to have Bill Belichick in the division anymore. I expect the Patriots to draft a quarterback here with the first 2 or 3 picks of the draft.
Offensive minded head coach, you're feeling? That's the
Yeah,
direction you think they'll go in?
yeah. I'd be surprised if Drake May from North Carolina was not a New England Patriot.
I think it's interesting. I might be wrong, but at least for this season, last season, I think Miami is the only team in a division with 3 defensive minded head coach as the only offensive minded head coach. And I'm just interested to see how that dynamic starts to fold. And we always can say that, hey, the reason Bill Belichick's leaving the Patriots is because he just couldn't beat Tua. He just couldn't figure him out.
He does. Tua does retire Bill Belichick in the division undefeated against him, which is who would have thought that a few years ago. And look, I'm really looking for Tua to have a bounce back game because man, he saved the worst for last week. I mean, his worst game. Um, the interceptions I don't even think were unforgivable, but just in the second half, 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out,
Yep.
not audibling into runs. I mean, but the other part of it too is look, we have to remember, and this is where things can go off the rails as far as talking about Tua. In the grand scheme of things, number one in the AFC yard passing touchdowns, completion percentage, yards per attempt, points scored for an offense, and offensive yards. Okay, with Tua at quarterback, you can talk about the schedule. Those things don't happen for an entire season by accident. So improvements need to be, but you look at the narratives from the last 3 off seasons. 3 off seasons ago, it was about how bad of a mistake the Dolphins made by taking Tua over Justin Herbert. That's proven to be untrue. Then the next offseason, yeah, Tua is not too bad, but he's not going to be able to ever elevate an offense. Then this past offseason, yeah, Tua elevated the offense, but he's never going to play 17 games. Well, he just did.
Mhm.
So people, there's a large percentage of people and Dolphins fans who have lost the credibility at this point to say what Tua is and is not capable of doing moving forward. So just wanted to throw that in there too. And I'm rooting for this guy big time, and as well as the rest of the team, obviously. But I don't want Tua to go down in the final 2 games like this.
Yeah, the growth, right? Growth. Every year we've seen it with Tua, and just to end his 4th season with that growth. I mean, That's that storybook. Let's get you that bag type of way to end end the season. If he can go into Kansas City and get some sort of statement win. So, Kat, we spent 35 minutes talking about it. It's always very therapeutic before the game to chat with you. So, how you feeling? Do you think Tua can go in there, have that statement game? And just to be clear, if it doesn't happen, if it's a struggling performance, I am nowhere near saying get rid of Tua, but it's always a little more fun to walk down the positive scenarios than the negative.
Right. And look, this is a winnable game. To me, the Chiefs and not far. Vegas agrees. What the Chiefs favored? I think they're 3.5. They were 3.5. That might have gone up to 4.5. But regardless, the Dolphins would have been favored in Miami if this game were played there. So, and the Dolphins do have an advantage of, again, being able to run and stop the run better than the Chiefs. Chiefs are also playing at home. It's the loudest stadium in football. It's 5 degrees. That right there just does not sound like a Miami Dolphins win. But, Jake, if they do win, it will be their first playoff win in 8,410 days. Okay? Their last playoff win was December 30th, 2000 against the Colts. How old were you then? Let's see. 6?
Yep.
Yikes. That was 16. So, but I'm really dragging people to the end. I think the Chiefs win. I'm going to go 21-17 Chiefs in this one.
I think Merrick said 12-9, and that'd be like the least surprising score ever. I think this can be a very weird game, and the reason, I say this a few times, all of a sudden that means it's going to be a very high scoring game, just because that's the way these things work. No, but I agree with you. I think that it's important to keep in mind the Kansas City Chiefs are the defending Super Bowl champions. Patrick Mahomes is the greatest at finding answers. Andy Reid is a hell of a head coach, and the Dolphins are still figuring things out. Right. I mean, I think what makes everything so hard, so frustrating is the stars were aligning for that 1 p.m. game. If you're at home as that 2 seed, and just to see that go away has just made everything else so much more frustrating.
And piggybacking on what you said there too, about how it could be an unexpectedly high scoring game. This is going to be the coldest Dolphins played since December 2008 against the Chiefs in Kansas City. And that game was 38-31 Dolphins. Tyler Thigpen was quarterback for the Chiefs in that game. And that was a game the Chiefs got out to. Their Chiefs won, I think, 2 games that year only. And they got off to a 14-0 Dolphins. It was like Jamal Charles' breakout game. And then the Dolphins came storming back. But, yeah, I mean, just for argument's sake, if it's 5 degrees outside, it's probably going to be lower scoring. On second thought, I kind of like his prediction of 12-9 a little bit better. I'll stay with 21-17 Chiefs, but yeah, I mean, just get us one playoff win. Come on.
Yeah, I'll do this. How about would you take the over under if I put it at 2.5 touchdowns in this game? Over. I mean, you have 21-17, so.
So I'm wondering what is the over under here of this game? I'm trying to think of.
I can get you that real quick.
Yeah, I mean, I think. So I said 38 points. So the over-under is 43.5.
Yep.
So I felt a little ambitious there for both offenses, and still came up with 38 points. They came up with 21. So bet your mortgage on the under. I mean, that's my advice. No, don't really do that. I don't know if you have gambling sponsors.
It works. It works. We're
just cut that part out if you need to.
Yeah. No, we don't. We're totally good with it. That's kind of the thing that makes us a little special, is we can kind of wheel and deal, but like that. Cat, man, it's always a blast to talk with you. Merrick and Josh are actually going to be doing another show. They're jazzed up for the playoffs, so look out for that. It'll be some sort of Saturday morning special. So throw the cartoons away. You'll want to listen to Merrick and Josh. But that is it. That is all the time we have here on Another Dolphins podcast. Thank you all so much for listening. Go Dolphins. Get us that playoff win. And until next time, fins up.